I'm not doing cement kiln stuff or tossing rocks. I like the last set of puppies. That's the most dangerous puppy in Mississippi. I also like doing other stuff. That stuff's called biomass. Let me show you a little bit about my friend, biomass. So what is biomass and how does it work? Biomass differs from traditional coal or oil-run plants that we use already in the United States in one major regard. Biomass runs off organic materials. That could be any type of dry food like corn, cocoa shells, sugar, or other organic materials like untreated wood. So unlike coal, which we do not have an infinite supply of and will eventually run out of, biomass facilities run off of items that can be grown over and over and over again. Plants, trees, items like that. Fun fact, even though biomass pollutes the environment a quarter times more than a coal plant would, it's considered renewable energy again because the material that they use to fuel the plant can be regrown and is an infinite source throughout time, forever. Trees, plants will continue to grow. Therefore, science recognizes biomass technology as a renewable energy. Now, how does it work? Trees, plants, anything like that comes in a truck or a compactor, and it is dumped into a biomass facility where it is quickly incinerated by a fire. That fire heats up a boiling deal of water up here, which then creates steam and shoots it out the side into a turbine. That turbine has a fan that goes woo, woo, woo. If you're ever driving down the highway and you see one of those giant fans that's creating electricity through the wind, very similar process. Fire creates steam, steam shoots through a hole, propels a fan that then goes to a generator. That generator stores the electricity that's being made and then eventually shoots it into the power grid and forms electricity for nearby local houses, businesses, etc. So, that is how biomass technology works. The key being, biomass plants only accept dry organic materials that are untreated. Here is a map. It's not just any map. It's a map that outlines where all the biomass facilities in the United States reside. Again, if you've learned anything from your old buddy Chaw, it's the fact that these renewable energy plants are always located in areas of high population density. The reason for that is these plants are very, very expensive. You need to make sure that these plants have enough material going into them so that they can cover their cost to operate. So you're going to see a lot of plants on the East Coast and a lot of plants on the West Coast. Currently, Northstar does no business with biomass facilities. The reason for that is more often than not, we're able to find farmers and folks that recycle the food products that we get in a more cost-effective manner. Meaning, most farmers will pay for dry food as opposed to charging us to incinerate it. In terms of wood waste, we run into one of two problems when it comes to biomass. More often than not, the wood pallets that we get can be resold as is. Often, the broken wood pallets result in such a small amount of tonnage that it doesn't make sense for us to find a home for these. Therefore, we don't do a lot of biomass business currently. Again, here's the map. You'll see a bunch over here, few in here, Not a lot right in that there area. That's the central U.S. So, what is the approval process for biomass material? Well, first of all, you're going to need an MCF, just like everything else. We'll need to know what you got, what form it's in, and how you plan on sending it, as well as a good old Herbie Hancock from your supplier. More often than not, the biomass facility is going to ask for a sample. They're going to want to make sure this material burns well and isn't hazardous to the environment. Pricing. Pricing is going to vary by grade. As a general rule of thumb, you're looking at anywhere between $40 to $100 per ton for this material. Varies by grade in that wood is going to cost a different tipping fee than cocoa shells might cost. Additionally, price will vary by facility. What they charge in California is going to be a lot different than what they charge in Massachusetts. Now, in terms of pricing, the reason why Northstar doesn't do a lot of biomass business is currently we get a rebate for most of the dry organic material that we sell to farmers. So instead of charging us like a biomass facility might, the farmers are going to actually pay us money. Additionally, if it comes to wood, we sell wood pallets anywhere from $1 to $4 a piece if they're good, whereas a biomass facility would charge us a fee to burn this material. Next, almond joys, we talked about it. Who in the world are eating these? Seriously, it's ridiculous. Be a normal guy. Eat a Snickers. Eat a Milky Way. Tired of almond joy. Other than that, there is opportunity in biomass. We need to just find some dry items that farmers won't buy. If we can do that, maybe there is some opportunity for biomass, but in terms of the reason I've already listed, most of our biomass eligible materials are better suited off by going to farmers and or wood pallet recyclers. 998, 999, 1,000. I don't know if you heard me counting. I just did 1,000 curls. No big deal. Hey, when I'm not breaking a physical sweat, I like to break a mental sweat. So why don't you come with me? We'll learn all about waste energy. Cool, guys. So how does traditional waste energy work? If you've been paying attention when we talked about cement kilns and we talked about biomass, really, it's not that much different. You're going to have your customer either deliver in material baled on a standard trailer or in a compactor. They're going to then dump that trash into a waste to energy facility. That trash is going to go on a grate where it's heated by fire, which in turn turns water into steam, and then that propels the turbine fan back and forth and back and forth, and it creates electricity. Just like if you were driving down the highway and you saw one of the wind fans. Very similar, except for instead of using wind, they're using fire to burn the trash, turn the water into steam, and then the steam acts just like the wind would act. Once the turbine propels, the energy that is collected from that movement goes into a generator, it's stored, and then it's introduced into the grid. The electrical grid. It goes to businesses, homes, anything that would require electricity in the area. The remaining source of trash would be ash. Not every waste energy facility does this, but many do. They then take the ash, and it's the only difference from a concrete kiln, is they would take the ash from the trash, and then deliver that ash into a cement kiln to be used in making highways, roads, things of that sort. So, essentially, that's it. We create steam from burning trash to power a turbine, which then goes into a generator, and it's introduced into the grid as electricity. That is a very, very basic understanding of how traditional waste energy facilities work. So here's a map of the traditional waste to energy facilities. This map would entail the Covantas of the world, the Excels of the world, the Wheelabrators of the world, as well as those select counties that own and operate their own waste to energy facilities. Examples of this would be Harrisburg in Pennsylvania. La Crosse in Wisconsin would be another example of a county that's taken it upon themselves to build, run, and operate waste to energy facilities. Again, as we've learned before, you can see the bulk of these sites are going to be on the East Coast, the West Coast, and in areas where there's high population density. The reason for this is it cost $500 million to build one of these facilities, just to build it. So if you've got a $500 million facility, you want to make sure that you're going to have enough trash to run day in and day out, that you're getting enough material so that you can eventually pay off the cost of building it, the maintenance of running it, etc. So for that reason, we're not going to see a lot of waste energy plants in Montana, Wyoming, places where population's very, very low. That's about it. You're going to look for these on the East Coast, West Coast, and then select areas in the Midwest and Florida. We've obviously worked with Huntsville in Alabama and Tulsa in Oklahoma. So if you've got a customer in this area, generally speaking, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Layton, Utah, or working up into Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin is going to be your best bet to find a home for this material. So how do you get material approved at Covanta, Excel, Wheelabrator, VLS? Well, they're all going to have pretty much the same structure. You're going to need to fill out a material characterization form. Here are the important parts we're going to need. First, you need to fill out where this is coming from, the address, the contact, etc. Then you're going to have your supplier sign authorizing us as a vendor. The next step would be, how is this coming in? Is it going to be compacted in a compactor? Or is it going to be baled on a trailer? Is it going to be in gaylords on a trailer? And what type of volume do you expect? 10 tons a month, 5 tons a month, a ton every other month? And then most importantly, a description of the trash. Here we have an example of some plastic and paper bags out of Arista. We've listed here that these will be bagged. They're going to be in boxes on skids, and it's going to be delivered via trailer. The second page, there's a lot of scientific stuff. 99 out of 100 times, you're not going to have to fill this out. What's most important is at the bottom, you have your site contact sign. He's basically signing off and confirming the material that we have is going to be exactly as it's described over here. It's going to just confirm that they have what they say they have. As far as approvals go, Covanta is the company we work with the most. It's pretty much about the same. What you're looking at is about a 2-week period where it takes from the time the MCF is submitted to the time it is approved. So keep in mind when you talk to your customers, if we don't already have an approval, you are letting them know this could take up to 2 weeks. There have been circumstances where we've had this rushed. 2 or 3 times I've gotten Brad to accept or rush an approval, and it took about 3 or 4 days. I definitely would not count on that. Count on approvals for standard waste to energy to take up to 2 weeks. So what does waste to energy pricing generally look like? Well, with Covanta, they've basically condensed the different types of waste to energy that we could send in into 4 categories. General plant trash in a compactor, general plant trash in a trailer, food product via compactor, unfinished goods in a trailer, and finished goods in a trailer. Wheelabrator, VLS, they'll all have pretty much the same categories. This is pretty consistent throughout. Anything we could send would probably fall into one of these 4 categories, with the exception of food production waste. Theoretically, we could put it in gaylords and send it via trailer. but we don't run into that very often. That would really probably fall into finished goods trailer. Either way, with the general plant trash, basically this is just break room refuse, items from the recycling process that end up not being recycled. Could include some film that has lard or chicken fat on it that can't be recycled, so we send it waste to energy. Compactor loads are always going to be slightly cheaper than trailer loads. Less labor to get it unloaded. They basically dump it into a pit and then it's gone. Versus a trailer, they've got to manually unload, gaylord by gaylord, bale by bale. So it's always cheaper to send something via compactor because it's less labor. With Covanta, we're looking at $59 to $80 per ton. Rule of thumb, wheelabrators generally $5 to $10 a ton cheaper. VLS is generally $5 to $20 a ton higher. This is just kind of giving you an idea of what we're looking at from Covanta, who happens to be the company we work with the most as far as waste energy goes. General plant trash via trailer, it'd be the same type of material above, except for they bale it or put it in gaylords. Again, because they have to pull it off piece by piece on a trailer, instead of $59 to $80, now we see a price of $85 to $125. Food production waste, an example of that might be Skittles in a compactor, could be gum chunks in a compactor, it could be fish in a compactor, it could be really anything to do with food, delivered in $85 to $125. Unfinished goods on a trailer, an example of that would be the polypropylene dog food bags from Mars or the Kraft bags from Mars. Any type of basic packaging without the food in them would fall under the category of unfinished goods. For that grade, we're looking at $100 to $125 via trailer. Finished goods would be an example of Mars dog food bags with the dog food still in them. Here we're looking at $150 to $200 per ton. The reason for this variance is we work with sites all over the country. I can tell you that the California sites and for some reason Huntsville in Alabama seem to be much higher than the other Covanta sites. Again, if we're looking at wheelabrator, these prices would be slightly cheaper. If we're working with VLS, a company down in South Carolina, these would be slightly higher. But ultimately, this is the range that you should expect when dealing with Covanta on tipping fees. So pricing continued here. It's important to understand that there is a $500 load minimum. It's definitely an indie, but I see the trend being that all Covanta sites are going to eventually, probably within the next 6 months, have the $500 minimum. How this works is if you are, let's just say hypothetically, we have a site, company A, that ships 5 tons of material in at a tip fee of $100 per ton, then we would just pay $100. If they shipped in 4 tons at $100 a ton, our charge would be $400, but because it did not meet that $500 minimum, instead of being charged the $400, which you would think logically would make sense based off the 100 times 4, instead that load would then cost $500. The reason why Covanta does that is, there's time and energy used to unload compactors, offload compactors, unload trailers. They want to make sure that each load is worth their while. When you look at a site like Indianapolis, they're getting close to being full. They've got enough customers so they can be a little bit more particular about the loads they take in. For it to be worth their while, they need there to be at least $500 minimums worth of material. In addition to that, Long Beach specifically has a $500 per load charge. So how that works is, again, let's say company A has a tip fee of $100. They send in 5 tons. That costs $500. Well, on top of that, there would be an additional $500 charge for the load itself. Regardless of what the total cost is, there will always be a $500 minimum load at Long Beach. As far as Covanta goes, Wheelabrator goes, VLS goes, there is no negotiating with these guys. These prices are set in most cases outside of Pennsylvania and possibly other spots in the Northeast. The sites really have no other competition. In the Northeast, Covanta might have to go up against Wheelabrator, but other than that, the select sites across the United States are all kind of one-offs, and they know there's no one else that they have to compete against, so their prices are set, and if you don't like it, you'll do something else with your material. Other than pricing, some things that I think might be important for you to know regarding traditional waste to energy is there is no LTL loads. We can't LTL trucks into any of the Covanta sites and have them pull off 2 or 3 Gaylords or 2 or 3 bales. They just do not want the risk of pulling someone else's stuff off, incinerating it, and being liable. So no LTL loads. It's got to be in a compactor or it's got to be on a full trailer. Recently, we've run into some safety issues at Indianapolis. Nothing to do with our stuff, more with an accident that occurred there. There are some new rules as far as loading goes. It will not apply to any of our accounts at this point, but just keep this in mind if we are selling material in the future. Anything we would send in via trailer, if it's baled, it needs to be banded to the pallet. Additionally, any type of bales we might have, there always has to be a pallet between bales. So you can double stack bales and send it to Covanta Indy, but there has to be a pallet on the bottom bale and a pallet on the top bale, underneath both, obviously. In addition to that, if you have loose material like ergos or foundations, they can't be stacked any higher than 4 feet tall. It has to be stacked to a height where if a driver goes in with a forklift, lifts it up, he can still fully see in front of him. So those are some of the safety issues that we've had. Obviously no LTL. We've gone over pricing. Let me know if you have any other questions, but that's waste to energy in a nutshell. Thanks.